Welcome to Legal Meets, a look at legal beyond the law, a podcast by Legaler. On this episode of Legal Meets, we meet Richard Tromans, the founder of TromansConsulting, an advisory firm to legal businesses on strategy and innovation. He also runs the site artificiallawyer.com, which is dedicated to developments in legal AI and automation. Welcome to another episode of Legal Meets. I'm joined today by Richard Tromans, the artificial lawyer and also founder of TromansConsulting, based over in the UK. Thanks for joining us on this early morning.
No, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. And, Richard, I just want to cut straight through to the other side of the legal coin and get a little view into what you'd be doing if you weren't the artificial lawyer at the moment. And if Ted approached you for a talk and they basically said that you couldn't touch the legal realm and you had to talk about something else, is there a secret talent or an interest or a hobby? What would you actually talk about?
I think it would be technology, not just legal technology, but more broadly the power of technology, the way that technology has altered human evolution. It is the driving force for social change, for economic change, and I think we overlook it sometimes. We don't realize actually how everything in our lives are shaped by technology. Even to things such as democracy, as the shape of the developed countries, they're all very much shaped by the developments of technology. So I would probably be doing something in that area.
So it's not just giving us Snapchat and Facebook.
No, it's everything. It's everything. I mean, we've gone from from the Stone Age hunter-gatherers to sort of the early agrarian societies, to cities, to through the medieval period, industrialization. Now we're into the sort of post-industrial world with an information economy. Which is it's all technology.
It's interesting how that supply chain has changed to a data one. So you've got basically, I guess, transport, you've got energy and communication, and all those three have really, from steam engines to now, electric cars, from Morse code to Legaler. You've got all those different forms of communication getting faster and faster, and then the actual supply chain now is data. So the internet is the supply chain of data. So it's a very interesting time to be alive. And even for lawyers, the services are actually going through a different supply chain now. So once upon a time, whether it was physical papers and documents, now it's a digital form. So I'm sure it'd be a very interesting talk. But getting back to your, I guess, I'm going to congratulate you on being the first person to not be a lawyer on the show. Makes me feel not alone. But you're not actually a lawyer by background, but you've been consulting in the legal industry for some time now. So how did you make that progression? What were the actual steps to actually drive you towards the industry that you weren't particularly a lawyer in the first place?
Okay, I started off as a journalist. My first proper day job as a journalist was working for a magazine called Legal Week, which you probably know. I joined a couple of months after it started back in '99, and it was a very, very new thing. It was completely new to me. I knew nothing about the law, knew nothing about commercial law firms. I had no one in my family connected to the law as such. So it was a very interesting experience. I got to know many of the big firms. My role then was the head of the sort of international reporting. So I was dealing with a lot of the mergers. So it was a very active time in the legal market, that period, 1999 to 2004. It wasn't so much focused on technology, but there was lots of activity. The legal world was changing quite rapidly. Sorry, excuse me. Then I became a consultant, working first for an American and then for an English sort of strategy consultancies, starting off in editorial roles and sort of analyst roles, and then sort of work my way up to doing my own consulting for clients and building my own practice. And the innovation side came out of that through this long-held interest in technology. But before, the technology hadn't felt that strategic. I mean, document management systems, email, it's all very important, but it didn't really change the business that much. Uh, with AI, suddenly we're in a different world. We are looking at technology that is really strategically important. Operationally, it's incredibly important. It totally transforms the internal dynamics of the business. And it just felt so important that I thought, I've got to get into this. I've got to get up to speed. And that's how then Artificial Lawyer came about, because I looked at the market and no one was really covering AI and the law. There were a few stories, but there wasn't really anything dedicated to it. And I thought, well, this is something I would like to do, and I will do it as a hobby to see how it goes. And then it sort of grew from there.
And now here you are. So you've actually gone full circle from a passion for writing, and I guess it's a natural talent of yours, and you gravitated towards the legal industry through that vehicle. And now here you are, commentating on the developments in AI and automation. And we'll talk about the Artificial Lawyer website in a moment. But you're also a consultant to major law firms through TromansConsulting.
Yeah.
Tell us how that got underway. What are you actually doing with these law firms today?
Well, a variety of things. I mean, half of it is what you might call bread and butter strategy work, so helping people with mergers, merging law firms together, international expansion, that kind of thing. The other side, which is the new aspect of what I'm doing, is actually advising the law firms on innovation, helping them to approach and structure their thinking in relation to artificial intelligence and the other new technologies that are coming out, and to not just sort of point them at one or two uses, but to encourage them to look at it in the round, how it will affect the entire firm, how it will affect everything from billing to staffing to leverage to how they market the firm, all aspects of it, and how it will affect their relationship with the clients, and also to give them an overview of what is out there and to help them sort of choose the right companies to talk to. So I'm not a programmer myself, obviously. I don't get into the nitty-gritty of saying, well, you need to stick that bit into that bit. But I sort of act as a bridge between.
So it's a holistic. I guess it's a holistic approach to implementing technology, and with a core focus of AI. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't hold myself out as a sort of AI programmer. I'm not an expert in natural language processing. But what I do have is the understanding of the market and how that relates to law firms, because I've spent about 18 years working with law firms. So, yeah.
Well, I must say you're a prolific writer, and there's a lot of exciting content to cover at the moment. I just received one of your emails only moments before we jumped into this interview, and they're coming at a frantic pace. So, there's more and more exciting startups, it seems, at the moment. So. Now tell me a little bit about artificiallawyer.com, and I was commenting before on what a great domain you actually managed to pick up, but how did you progress into that, and what are you actually hoping to achieve with artificiallawyer.com?
Okay, well, it started off as a blog in around sort of June last year. It started over the summer. Things had got a bit quiet because of Brexit. So I should actually thank the voters of Britain for helping to create Artificial Lawyer.
They've given you more time to
because if everything had been, if we'd voted to remain, everything would have carried on as usual. I would have been incredibly busy over the summer, as I was the previous year.
Right.
But instead, I had several weeks where it was a lot quieter, and I just thought, well, if I'm going to do this, now's the time to do it, because I had that space to do it. So I started it as a blog.
Right. Okay.
I thought, well, let's see where it goes. It then just started to attract thousands of readers. I mean, I now get multiple thousands of readers from around the world. And it's now become a proper site. I'm now accepting advertising and sponsored content. That obviously operates completely, behind a firewall. The news and everything will carry on independently as usual. But it's now starting to evolve into a really
business.
proper.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, congratulations! I noticed that recently there was a really good white paper that you released. It was done in association with Thomson Reuters, and basically Legal AI, a beginner's guide. Take us through, I mean, lawyers listening will be hearing AI, they'll be hearing about the impending doom, they'll be hearing about lawyers being laggards and not adopting technology, not knowing where to start, but just on a basic level, especially in the legal field, just put some context. So what is AI and what should people be looking out for?
Okay. AI is a family of technologies. It can relate to robotics, autonomous vehicles, video, image recognition, speech production, and the one area that's most interesting to lawyers is NLP, natural language processing, which simply means using software to read text and to understand it in a true semantic way, which means reading sentences and clauses in the same way that a human does, and to some degree also using machine learning to then perfect and improve that understanding and extraction. Now, initially some people may say, well, that's not very exciting, is it? Just reading text. But if you think about the fact that the law is 95% written text, there are, obviously there are verbal submissions in court, but a huge majority of all legal work is text. If you have a technology that can interact with text to some degree autonomously, then you have an incredibly powerful tool for the use of lawyers and within and across the whole legal market. So that's, I think, the first point. The second point is that there are many different types of legal AI, and there are hybrids evolving day by day. I've tried, in that paper with Thomson Reuters, I tried to create a taxonomy. So I see three main branches, which is the sort of contract document analysis systems. You have what I call interactive interfaces or intelligent interfaces, where a person is not necessarily examining a document, but is being guided through to an outcome, which perhaps could be to complete a document or to gather some specific information, which allows them to do something else. And then the third bit is research, intelligent research or AI research, which allows you to sort of do a deep dive into an enormous data core of information. This could be court data, litigation data, and this can be used in different ways. This could just be pure research. It could also involve developing predictions, predicting case outcomes. So, and then on top of that, we have sort of hybrids. We have some interesting things going on with blockchain, with smart and intelligent contracts, which aren't necessarily connected to AI, but there are some links there.
There'll be an intersection very shortly. Yeah.
Yes.
So basically, there's this notion, all the above that you just described is some theoretical artificial intelligence. It sounds good in practice. No computer can do the job of a lawyer. Basically a lot of the bots that you're seeing are decision trees. So if this then that, they're not actually thinking for themselves. And then obviously along came the Google Alpha kind of scenario where they were hinting at intuition kind of being born and AI kind of moving beyond the chess games of just rules and then actually thinking on its feet in a sense. So is that the crux of AI where it goes one step beyond just if this then that, and it actually starts learning and getting smarter, and you got platforms like Ross out there and Raven, all these ones that are popping up now that are actually really getting smarter over time and learning and kind of taking on the role of some junior lawyers.
Yeah, to some degree. The machine learning is improving the software, and that is an incredible thing. In that, you have assisted machine learning, and then there is, you might say, independent machine learning. Most of the legal AI technology is assisted learning to some degree. There's some input. It goes in phases. You use training data. You then go back. You then help the software adapt to what has been learned. It's not sort of just plug it in and off it goes and just learns. For example, as you mentioned, like the Go example is a good one, where they've been using sort of neural networks, and it's been very, very autonomous. Most of the legal AI isn't like that yet. It's not so focused on it. It's more there's more human intervention involved, but that doesn't sort of take away from it. It's not really thinking for itself because there's nothing there to be thinking as such. But what perhaps the best way to see it is that the software is perfecting itself with a little bit of human intervention, and that's an incredible thing, really, because no one is rewriting the software from scratch. It is literally improving, and it will improve as more and more data is given to it.
So you're probably, through your consulting, you're very close to the application of it. So again, going back to theoretical assisted or artificial intelligence, and then now you've got the more applied artificial intelligence. What are you actually seeing day to day? Because again, there's this impending doom. There's kind of the robots are going to take our jobs. Richard Tromans obviously big commentator on the speed that will happen in the professions, and it's already happening in other verticals in the service industry to a greater extent than legal. Where do you see the actual practical day-to-day application of it? Is it being rolled out in some of the larger firms? Is it kind of something, again, is it on the horizon, or is it actually here now, and is it being used by firms?
Oh yeah, no, it is definitely here and now. I mean, which is why the level of interest is so high. I mean, you only have to read Artificial Lawyer to see that the regular stories about law firms not just piloting the software, but
they're getting outcomes, right? They're getting practical outcomes.
Yeah, I mean, I won't mention any particular firms, but there are many, many, many very large law firms in the UK, in America, across Europe, and also Australia, who are making use of legal AI systems. The most popular types of legal AI at the moment are undoubtedly the document contract analysis systems, but we will see other ones developing for sure. The reason for that, of course, is because due diligence work, for example, which you need in M&A transactions, is very prevalent. The large commercial law firms are doing a lot of M&A. The clients are pushing back on fees for what they see as process work. Quite often they're demanding a fixed fee for either the whole job or elements of the job. So if you have a fixed fee to do the due diligence, the more efficiently and quickly you can do that job, the more you're going to protect your margins.
So as opposed to running the meter with the billable hour, now you're incentivized to actually be more efficient. Where again, that's the big game changer at the moment throughout the legal industry and changing the mindset to adopt all these technologies. It's interesting, a recent report came out saying that document review is only about 4% of billables for the law firm. So a lot of this technology seems to be aimed at, considering AI is predominantly aimed right now at document review, as you mentioned, and a little bit of e-discovery and mostly research. Does that kind of play into the impact it's actually making? Again, this report came out saying that it's not really making that impact. It's still quite far off and hasn't been applied to those other areas where law firms, kind of case administration, management, document drafting, due diligence, are basically about 55% of billing. So do you think it's something that's going to creep in slowly, or is it actually already creeping in, but the applications are far beyond the 4%? Yeah.
Well, I think it's far beyond the 4% in terms of potential, for sure. I mean, I'm not sure where that figure came from. I mean, it depends on the firm. I mean, if you're a large corporate law firm and about 30% of your billings comes from mergers and acquisitions, and every M&A deal, a significant proportion of that work is going to have due diligence in it, for obvious reasons, then there's one immediate use. Your litigation department is probably going to be using, or could use, some type of legal AI for study, for example, dividing privileged from non-privileged information, which is one of the uses now. If you're doing compliance regulatory work, this could be in banking and finance. This could be because of new regulations in the EU, for example, on the capital that a counterparty has to hold in a derivatives transaction. Again, you'll want to analyze all your contracts. That again is a great job for legal AI. The list goes on.
It seems like
real estate.
Yeah.
I mean, most large commercial firms have big corporate departments and big real estate departments.
So they can all benefit from all that technology.
Absolutely. Yeah. Due diligence, lease extraction, and they'll be doing litigation. So, yeah, I mean, it's hard to put me on the spot to come up with a figure. I haven't really sort of thought about an exact figure, but 4% seems extremely low. I would have thought that the potential for legal AI is more like 30 to 40%.
Well, I'm guessing that it's going to become a part of, the big boys are all building out APIs, and it's going to become a core technology, and the interface is slowly moving towards voice, which is basically an extension of AI, whether you got Siri or Alexa or these different, technologies that Microsoft and Google are making available. And then even in the case of Ross, built on the back of IBM Watson. So you're going to have these really powerful platforms, and whether it's a document review platform, whether it becomes, again, an e-discovery platform, it's most likely they're all going to have some element going forward. AI is quite new in its application, but they're all going to, as you said, that crossroads between smart contracts and AI. It seems that there's going to be this crossroad where it's all going to come together, and everything's just going to have to become more intelligent by nature. And smart contracts are going to be actually firing off a lot more information into these platforms.
Absolutely, and it will all integrate. I mean, at the moment, like in many technological revolutions, you have lots of small companies, lots of entrepreneurs and pioneers who are all developing the tree, that each hundreds of little branches, but eventually it will all start to consolidate again, in a few years, and we will see this incredible convergence of different types of new legal technology, crossovers and synergies, which perhaps we can't even, predict right now.
Yeah, you probably can't see those.
I think it will. Yeah, I think it will have an incredible effect. It really will. I mean, here's one example which hasn't been explored much, which is legal bots, legal chatbots. There's been quite a bit of interest in the access to justice world, using legal bots to
you got Joshua Browder and
exactly.
Tom Martin's going to be on from LawDroid on the podcast shortly too, so we'll dig into that.
Yeah, who wrote about recently. Yeah, exactly. He's a fantastic example.
Yeah.
And that's just the beginning as well. I mean, once this can be integrated with an AI legal research system, we can then get some NLP used to look at previous contracts. Machine learning can help to improve the process and so forth. Yeah. So all these different things will come together.
Yeah. So I guess the one interesting thing about the legal industry having this impending wave of disruption and change is that the actual commodities, and I spoke with Sam Glover about this as well, the actual commodity of legal, and you just mentioned 95% of it is in documents. So more so than any other service industry, you've got court data, you've got IP data, you've got basically trademarks, all documented and ready to go. So once this AI technology becomes more and more applicable to that data, you're going to have this incredible information sets coming out that have never been, it's unprecedented. So, and that's going to be continually built upon, and get the bots are going to get smarter. You're going to have more access to data mine and kind of take unstructured data and kind of make use out of it.
Absolutely, and every week or so I see a new, very imaginative use of it. For example, there was a story that I did last week, an artificial lawyer, about a litigation funder, which provides capital to allow big cases to be heard. And they have teamed, and of course they don't want to just back any case, because they want to make sure they're going to back a good case. Yep. And everyone involved wants to be involved in a case that's going to win. And so they've teamed up with an AI specialist, a legal AI specialist, to try and help them to figure this out. And this is in particular in relation to patents. So where there's a ton of public data, so you can really set the NLP loose on that and do some really fantastic machine learning.
I guess you could run lots of other new technologies in the legal tech industry over the top of that, because you've got platforms that are now telling you which judge that's most likely to give you the right outcome. Again, you've got in literally every area of legal technology, you've got some kind of whether it's assisted intelligence or artificial intelligence, it's there for the lawyers to kind of use right now. So it's an exciting time.
Absolutely, it's a question of just embracing it. I think one of the biggest challenges we face with the adoption of legal AI is that sometimes if the management team doesn't feel comfortable with legal AI, if they don't quite know what it is, or if they think they know what it is but perhaps have a misconception, they'll kick it down to the IT department thinking, well, they'll know what it is. But strangely, sometimes the IT department isn't that excited about it either,
Right. Okay.
because they've grown up on a certain types of software, certain types of technology, and they're not that overjoyed with the idea of having to be responsible for figuring this all out.
So yeah.
So in some ways, it needs to be kicked back up to the management team, who are mostly partners. Get in some lawyers or non-lawyers who are really interested in technology, and some of the firms are doing that. I've met a couple of firms where you've got people who were partners or equity partners who've even asked for a demotion to a different sort of category
Right.
in the firm, so that they can devote their time to innovation and technology rather than being sort
I
of
would say
day-to-day
they're
partners.
the exception rather than the rule, but
Exactly,
it's interesting that
and
it's
I think
happening.
that's the challenge, is that in some ways sometimes something this new, something this creative, gets caught between two things. It's not really sort of your standard document management system that you can just hand over to, some person who's very used to that type of software, and it doesn't really fit easily into the hands of, say, the managing partner, who's like, well, what is this?
Yeah, well, the stakeholders
But
have to decide to implement it, right? So they have to become familiar with actually how it's going to benefit their firms.
Exactly, and they have to understand. And people, I think nearly every lawyer, in fact, I don't think I've met a single lawyer, at least not in the last couple of years, who thinks this is the end of lawyers.
Right. Okay.
No one,
Well,
no one I
well,
meet
well. That was going
thinks
to be
that.
my next. I guess the it's not $1 million question. It's more the 700 billion, depending on what number you want to go. Question. And
Yeah.
should lawyers be worried about their jobs?
No.
You've spoken obviously about junior lawyers, paralegals.
Mm,
In the previous interviews, we've spoken about new jobs appearing. That makes sense in terms of the technology is going to evolve the actual commodity of law, and so you're going to need coders, you're going to need due diligence done on smart contracts. But
mm.
I'm assuming you think it's going to create more jobs or less jobs. Should lawyers be worried?
It's going to increase. It's going to increase the overall size of the legal industry, because it will increase access to justice. Because being a lawyer is never going to be cheap for the buyer. Law, law is a regulated industry. You have to do a lot of study to get there. You have to take out professional indemnity insurance to practice. It's quite hard to be a lawyer just by yourself. You need a sort of infrastructure around you. So it's always going to be an expensive service.
You've got these
It's not
hardwired
people can't just,
overheads you can't get rid of.
yeah, people can't just rock up and help
Yeah.
you, with nothing. Just use their ingenuity. It's much more difficult to do. So law is always going to be expensive. But if AI can help reduce the costs to the clients in some of the more process level work or some of the more introductory level work, then it could actually end up increasing the size of the market. It could bring in new people. There's that famous figure that 70 to 80% of SMEs,
Yep.
at least in the US, and I know the figure's roughly the same in the UK, don't ever use a lawyer, because they just are immediately put off by the high costs for what appears to be relatively simple work.
Yeah. And if they
They would probably pay for something very, 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 very high level, but the introductory stuff, they're like, well, that's £1,000, and they're like, no way.
Yeah, as you said, between fixed fees coming about, that then affords the opportunity for consumers to go compare prices. All kinds of things start coming from there, and then the lawyers then discovering new ways by being forced to become more efficient, and then they can reach a larger audience, as you said. So ultimately, the revenues should increase, and there should be more jobs, and they're just done differently in a more efficient way, it sounds.
Yeah, no, definitely. And also individual law firms will get larger, because if you think about the productive capacity, if you think about a law firm as a machine itself, as a metaphor, there's an input and there's an output. It can only absorb so many new case starts each week because of the productive limitations of its staffing. It just cannot do any more. But if you add AI, you're increasing the productive capability. And because it's actually sort of doing the work itself, it's not generating more process work for the senior lawyers to do, i.e. it's not absorbing up their time. It's actually absorbing the annoying stuff and providing more interesting revenue earning opportunities for the senior partners. So overall, it could actually increase PEP, your profits. It could increase your revenue. I wrote a piece a couple of weeks ago called AI and the Legal Renaissance, And the key comment in that is that legal AI is probably the best thing that has ever happened to the legal industry.
Yeah, I think you call it the industrialization of cognition as the
Yeah.
as the key catchphrase, and that's exactly what it is, right? And we spoke about this at the start. That technology is kind of moving in leaps and bounds, and that's the next industrial revolution, a sense of cognition.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, people are fretting that they're going to lose their jobs. I don't see it at all. Some of the middle to lower ranking paralegal jobs, which are really quite basic, will go. But to be honest, many of the paralegals won't mind that because they would rather do more advanced work anyway.
Sure.
I mean, there are some interesting economic questions about what happens when law firms start to push up their paralegals to do more interesting work.
Yeah, like the rest of the supply chain, right?
Uh,
It's they're giving more value-based, I guess, transactions as opposed to let's send the paralegal to the library for a few hours.
exactly, exactly. But what happens then? So there are
So
some
what happens to the
interesting
business model then?
aspects.
What kind of shape does it take once you add this sprinkle of technology and you start getting this shift in the pyramid? What actually happens to the model?
I've thought about this a lot. Initially, my view was that the pyramid will invert completely. I'm not so sure that's right now. I think actually, perhaps paradoxically, the the model will actually stay exactly the same.
Oh, right, okay.
All that will happen is that the bottom layer of the pyramid will be a little bit higher up. It'll
Right.
be like on stilts. If the classic
Yeah, so like a
legal
true
pyramid.
disruption that it eats up the bottom, all that technology will start kind of just,
Yeah, and then imagine it's like a couple of stilts on the
yeah,
bottom of a
right,
great
okay.
big pyramid, but it just kind of like props it up a bit, like jacks it up.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's what will happen is that the human part of the pyramid will start at a slightly higher value level, but the overall shape will still remain roughly the
And
same
potentially
because
a flooding
the,
out of partners, and you got distributed, I guess, law firms popping up. You got new law that working with less overheads. So I imagine, again, to take the pyramid metaphor further, that the pointy end
yeah.
won't be so pointy. So you might have more
Well, I'm
stakeholders at
not
the high
sure
level.
about that. I'm not sure actually. I think that there's room for different models. I mean, the pyramid model fits when you have a partnership, and partnerships create it's almost implicit within a partnership. Partnerships tend to, it's almost like in their DNA, they tend to create pyramids even if they don't intend to. It just kind of grows out of
Yep.
partnerships if you leave them long enough.
Yep.
Sufficient number of generations, boom, it appears. The dispersed model is different because they're not partnerships and they don't have leverage. So they have a very, very, very flat structure. And I think AI will be tremendously useful for the dispersed
Yeah, you've got a
models.
few law firms in Australia. You've got a leading one, Nexus Lawyers, where they've got just a really unique billing type, where they're not just contractors working independently. They're actually one entity, and they're all kind of again, it is a true dispersed model, which creates billing hurdles, but they've obviously used technology to get around that, and now they've got like a incentivized program for all their kind of stakeholders. So again, those models are they're popping up everywhere. Our technology in legal is basically helping enable those people to work and collaborate better as well. So again, reducing overheads, less travel, being able to directly kind of meet your clients as well. So it's interesting seeing 80% of the market is sole practitioners. So interesting to see. Traditionally, they weren't
Well,
incentivized by efficiency, right? So
absolutely. I mean, I did a piece around Christmas about a 10 lawyer firm in Florida that does bankruptcy, and they work with Ross,
oh right, okay,
and which obviously it started off very much focused on US bankruptcy law, and they have become so much more productive because the junior lawyers and paralegals there can now devote more of their time to doing higher value work, and the flow through into the firm has increased
okay. So that's
because
a
now they can
perfect
take on more matters.
anecdote for what you just
Yeah,
suggested.
exactly.
Okay,
It's real proof
right.
that AI actually helps the firm. It's not a cannibalistic thing, and I think thinking about it in terms of cannibalism is thinking about it the wrong way. Um, and frankly, the clients are already up to speed on this. I mean, why are so many law firms building offshore process centers?
Yep,
The game's already
yep,
up.
yep.
I mean, the clients have
Well,
already
that's been
said,
the
"I'm not
fastest.
paying."
That's been the fastest area of growth in the legal industry over the last 5 years. So, and again, legal was one of the later ones to come to the table. So, I got a feeling.
Exactly,
Yeah,
and
okay, go ahead.
but this is it. Going back to the very first thing we talked about, which is that this the steady evolution of technology and how it changes society and alters the way people behave. This is what's happening. Is that the sort of process center model. It's a bit like the agrarian society. It was an adaptation. It's a bit better than the hunter-killer sort of like groups of cavemen roaming the savannah. Okay, it's a big improvement on
Yeah.
that, but you can improve upon the basic agrarian society again.
Well, you think about
You know,
due diligence cases that are going to appear more and more with e-discovery, whether it's dealing with the data from created from technology companies themselves. So if you have a patent issue, if you have like a dispute within technology or algorithms, or in a large-scale insurance company, for instance, you're going to have masses of data that they're not just readable because they're kind of based in technology, they're based in code, based in software, and in copious amounts of servers, and there's no real way to currently handle that just on paper, right? So you're going to have technology that you can actually apply to again data sets that are already digitized. So that's another area. Going back to will more jobs be created? Yeah, they're going to become more. Well, they're going to be new industries with new problems, and autonomous cars and vehicles are a big part of that, and how it's going to apply to insurance companies, traffic laws, collisions, all that kind of stuff. So I think we can definitely deduce that you're going with there's going to be more jobs camp. So it's exciting to hear.
for definite. I think it's just a lack of imagination when people say that it's going to sort of kill society. I just don't believe that.
Well, you shouldn't ask Elon Musk that question. He's a bit worried about the the doomsday.
That's the irony. Is that some of the people who are most pushing this, technology equals, the end of humans, which is slightly ironic given that humans exist as we are today because of technology, is that they're all pioneers in science and technology, like Bill Gates, Elon Musk, and so forth. These are guys at the cutting edge, or at least were. And it's I don't quite understand.
It's probably their imagination can kind of maybe go a few steps too far down the track. And again, they're privy to the cutting edge of it. And when you're in amongst, I think you see the radical pace as opposed to what's adopted commercially, and it can be quite daunting. I think his humorous example was of the spam killer bot saying, "Hey, how do we get rid of spam? All right, maybe we need to get rid of the humans, and so let's kill the humans." And a spam, AI is going to kill off humans to kind of get rid of spam, which wouldn't be a bad thing. But that's where all these conversations are going, and they're exciting. Again, it's on the forefront of this technology. So. Look, this stuff is all great. The AI, it's coming. There's legal tech startups popping up. Even for legal at the time, I think we were incorporated. There was maybe 200 legal tech companies on Angel List, and now it's in the thousands. So, what is actually the biggest impediment? You're out there talking to law firms, consulting, maybe banging your head against the wall sometimes. But what is the biggest impediment that you see, and what needs to change for this technology to actually be their friend, to actually be adopted?
Okay, there's two things. One is, as was often discussed during the US election recently last year, it's not that there's not enough information; it's the quality of information.
Right.
There's a lot of misinformation and false assumptions floating around in the market. And that needs to be addressed.
So you're just hearing horror stories as opposed to
Not necessarily horror stories, but it's just kind of not quite explaining to the actual people who would be using this software what it actually is, and that that creates a barrier. And one of the issues I think is that lawyers are very intelligent. They like to they're very good at abstract thinking. If you present an idea to them, they'll chew it over. They go, yeah, I got it, I understand now, and then that's it. But if the idea that they absorb kind of ends their interest in it, then that can be the end of the conversation. So it's quite often it's a question of saying, okay, yeah, you think you understand what this all means. Have you actually thought more horizontally about it? Think more laterally about it. How does this actually apply across the firm?
And to business, right? As opposed to just the practice of law. It's a business decision in the end. Yeah.
Exactly, it's a strategic decision. It's very 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 much a strategic decision. In the same way that if a law firm, as they do, sometimes ask me, could you help us find someone to merge with? Who do you think would be a good person, a good other law firm to merge with? It's the same with AI. You should be asking yourself, well, how does this fit in across the firm? How does this change us? How does this change our market position? Will this increase our PEP? How will this boost our revenue? How will this change how we market? And that's where lots of law firms are not going yet. There's this, they've kind of got their heads around the IT bit, but that's insufficient.
Is that the main frustration? As you said, lawyers are very intelligent, maybe a little risk averse by nature, but at the same time, I think they get all the technology, they get the business benefits, but then it's like it doesn't happen. And that could be potentially the structure of the law firms, the senior stakeholders are willing to see out their time at the top, not really incentivized by kind of changing business models. Again, the pointy end of the pyramid. So, do you think that's kind of at play as well?
Law has inherited a legacy of time-based billing, which is slowly being driven out, but it's not happening as quickly as a lot of people
would want predict it. Yeah, okay.
And because so much of legal activity is based on time still, a lot of remuneration of partners is connected to time. So if you're a partner and you've got a team of associates, and one of the ways that the remuneration committee judges if you've done a good job or not this year is by looking at the number of hours that your team, billed during, let's say, a due diligence exercise. And that due diligence has been made much more short and fast by AI. And if you're using a time measurement to judge performance, then you've created a perverse incentive now to be inefficient and not to use AI. And this is doubly perverse because clients are actually saying to the law firms, we don't particularly want to pay based on time for process work anymore. So you would build a better relationship with your client. The partner would be happier, the firm would be happier. So it's getting that message across. That's one of the challenges.
Yeah, so if you're not disrupting yourself, you're probably going to be lined up to get disrupted, right? So that's the overall message.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. All right, Richard, we've got a few parting shots on LegalMeets before we say goodbye. Are you an Android, Windows, or an iOS guy?
I use a Mac most of the time, but I've still got a lot of love for Microsoft.
Yeah, it's interesting to see again across the industry at the conferences that specifically the legal technology conferences. There's always I'm seeing there's a few Service Pros popping up, but there's mostly Macs on the desk, which always surprised me. And then lawyers are still tied to the Microsoft suite of tools, so it's obviously more agnostic these days. But it's interesting to see where that's all going. So apart from your actual phone, is there any? You mentioned at the start you'd love to give a TED talk on technology. What's the other bit of technology that you just can't live without?
Yeah, that was a good question that you floated to me earlier, and I was thinking some of the best technology we don't think about, like a metal sponge.
Right. Yes.
Really, think about metal sponge. Think about the technology involved in creating a metal sponge.
You take it for granted, right?
I mean, you try washing up.
I was going to say, it sounds like you've lost a few bets, and you've as a wife or someone got you cooking and washing too much.
Exactly, and you just it's you might say, oh, well, that's not technology.
No, well, I guess they're so perfect because they don't have to. They get it so right. They don't have to keep evolving it, right? If it's maybe some technology is just crap, has to be fixed, and this was like just perfect from day one, right? It's kind of like the David of kitchenware utensils, cleaning tools.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's always struck me as one of the most sort of overlooked and simple pieces of technology, but someone invented that, someone created that.
Yep,
and it does a fantastic
job. I wonder
job.
what else they actually ended up creating. It was a one-hit wonder. Well, is there any other apart from it sounds like doing the dishes? Is there any other daily rituals that you, whether it's meditation, whether it's something in the morning, evening, just something that you really use as a routine for maybe productivity, relaxation, just in your daily life?
Uh, well, I guess everyone's different. Everyone has different sort of body clocks, but I like to get up quite early, work pretty intensely until not particularly late, and then I just stop. I'm not one of these kind of guys who will just keep working all through the evening. I generally try to work in a solid block, have a very short lunch, and just effectively work from early in the morning till
So while you're
early in the
fresh,
evening, and then just stop.
it sounds like your writing juices kind of come to you in the morning and your inspiration.
Yeah, yeah, and but it's different for different people. I mean, other people like to work, an hour here, an hour there, and will work until 4 o'clock in the morning, and are quite happy to do that. I would be, it's rare that I would work past 7 o'clock in the
Oh,
evening.
great. Well,
I would rather just, you know.
I'm glad you're a morning person because we had to get you out of bed early for this call in London, and the sun's definitely gone down here in Sydney. But it's been great having you on Legal Meets. Very excited about all the developments happening with artificiallawyer.com and actually the entire industry of legal technology, specifically with all the cool AI technology that's popping up. So thank you very much for joining us, and we'll stay tuned to all your commentary and see where it all goes.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Have a good day. Thanks, Richard.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye-bye.